Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Daniel Herb and I'm starting up this channel, Herb Leathercraft. As you can see around me, there's some items that I've created and a little bit that I'm working on. And as you can see behind me, this is my newest shop. It's pretty basic. I'm very new to this, so I'm hoping that I can make this a success. What I'd like to go over today is at least a few of the tools that I use, where you can get some of them. Some of them are quite basic. Get them from Amazon. Amazon works pretty well. I can provide links if people are interested. You'll have to let me know in the comments below. So today what I'd like to cover is some of the tools that I use, the workspace that I've created. I plan on actually doing a build in the future of a new workbench and possibly storage area to replace this little plastic table I have here. So we'll get to it. Okay, so for some of the tools that I use on a regular basis, number one tool that you're going to need is some form of cutting device. So this is an Amazon special made in China. This is a cutting knife. You can also use it for skiving. We'll cover all the basics of leatherwork at a later time. This one is very cheap, but it's still very sharp. We'll also cover sharpening all our cutting tools later. Other tools that I'll use for precise cutting, I will use a scalpel. I will use a scalpel as a cutting tool as well. Very good for precise work. However, a scalpel is extremely sharp, but also very flexible. So it doesn't always create the nicest cut on a thick leather. Other tools I'll use, leather scissors. I actually received these from my mother, who used to work at a skate factory. They're very good. They're not the nicest cut, but they will cut through almost any style of leather. They can be very thick, and it will go. Your cutting distance is actually quite small, but it does work. Sounds like there's some construction going on outside. Hopefully that doesn't bother you too much. Another thing I don't have right now that I am going to invest in is a box cutter. Box cutters make a very nice straight cut. They can be adjusted. You can change the blades easily. So I plan on picking a good box cutter up so that I can cut my leather a little better, because a lot of curves and stuff I use the scalpel. However, I'm not getting a nice edge using the scalpel, so I'm going to switch that up, and hopefully my leathercraft will improve. For cutting tools, I don't use a whole lot more. The next few tools I use, this is a stitch line cutter. I use that a lot for decorative stuff as well. So if you can see on the edge of this cut leather belt, right in here, I've used that edge tool, or the cutting tool for a stitch line, to make a nice line. Other things, so for the edging, to round the edges, use one of these. This is an edge tool. It just has a little channel that cuts the edges. I'll show you how to use that later. After that, punches. So I have many punches. I have this oval punch here. I use that for some of my belt work. Probably one of my first projects will be a leather belt that I'll walk us all through. Leather belts are pretty awesome. They can be as easy as you want. They can be as difficult as you want. Our first project is going to be pretty easy. However, I am going to demonstrate pretty much every technique that I use. For other punches, I have many hole punches, all of different sizes. They all get used. I'll give you guys some tips about punching through thick leather later. I like to use wax on them so that they actually withdraw a little easier. After these punches, I have, let me just put these away. I have some stitch hole punches of many different types. Again, most of these are fairly cheap and found on Amazon. There you go. And I'll show you how to use all these later as well. So I did make a purchase for a decent punch. This is also a stitch hole punch. 4-hole. Very nice. I really like using these on projects where I would like to saddle stitch. We'll teach you saddle stitching techniques a little later on. Our next tool, burnisher. This tool I use pretty much on every project. That is for making your nice edges. So nice, smooth, shiny edges on leather craft. So that, the slicker, you wet the edge, and then you'll just rub it through the grooves. So wet the edge, rub it through the grooves, and it'll make a nice smooth edge. We'll show you that all on projects up in the future. Other tools I have. So if we're getting more decorative, I have a swivel knife. So this, you use one finger in it, and you'll cut through projects to make patterns. I can show you a basic pattern that I received from Tandy Leather. So Tandy Leather sends out patterns in their advertisements once in a while. I haven't used this one yet. I may on a project sometime in the future, but I haven't used it yet. So when I'm doing detailed work like the engraving or punching, there's a whole lot of equipment you can get. Generally, my signature stamp as it stands right now until I create my own for my business, my hobby, is this here. So every project I get or do has this on it somewhere. Maybe my first couple projects didn't, but we are getting there. So there's a few more tools that I'll cover later too as we use them. I got a few French skives, but we'll cover that at a later date when we're actually going to use them. So our main hammer that we use has a Teflon head. Now that gets used for pretty much everything, including decorative punching, which we'll get into later. There's a lot of these punches. Right now I have a very limited quantity, but we will work on expanding that in the future. The next thing I want to take you on a little walk to is my leather. So the next thing we'll move on to is leather. Right now I have a very thick leather that I am using for belts, belt blanks, etc. I don't remember the exact thickness, but I do have a couple of belt blanks here as well that we'll be using in projects in the future. I'll show you how to cut them and produce decent belts. A lot of the time when I'm making a belt, I utilize the equipment from an old belt and I'll remake it into something that the customer would like. So other leather that I have is over here, and I have it hanging on a simple hanger system that can support a bit of weight. It didn't mount as nicely as I would have liked, but I have here, this is like a leather for furniture, and it is going to be used in other projects. I also have a suede style leather and some more decent leather that can be worked with. A lot of that has been purchased either from Tandy Leather. I also have some rawhide. So rawhide I use for some of my shields that I make. So here's an example of a shield that I have made. I'll get a better view of it later, as well as some of my other projects that I have done. So now on to my workbench. Like I said, very basic workbench that I've created. It has a small wooden backing. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with it. I also only had nails at the time, so it's not as sturdy as I would like, but I will upgrade it in the future. So I have a vise with some wooden blocks in it. I use that for when I'm doing stitching right now, as I don't have a clamp. I also have some more letter punches that I use, letter and number punches that I'll use. Here's some of the tools that I was talking about. I have stitch line tools that I don't use that often right now. I also have a crease tool, a bone crease tool. I have a ton of clamps. There's my scissors and my hammer. This is my strapping tool, a little blade just up in there. You set your thickness and then you draw through. And you get a nice clean cut. And I'll show you guys how to use that later. Again, lots of clamps, lots of clamps. Paintbrush, that's for if I'm doing my shield work. I always keep scraps around. So my needles for stitching, and then all my tools in my acrylic tool set, as well as some rouge. I use that for my strobe, which I have up there, which isn't mounted nicely yet, but I will get to it. My other working area right here, plastic 6-foot table. Not ideal. This is what's going to be replaced with my custom table later. I do have some projects laying on the table, as well as some of my camera equipment, etc. And a sword, because I do kind of like medieval style stuff, and we'll get into that if people are interested as well. Again, like I said, this is that shield that I created, and if you look closely, this is that rawhide edge with some rope below it. So, more projects. This is a leather sword belt that I made. That was actually one of my first projects, and it was very interesting. It took me a long time to figure out what I was doing. A lot of YouTube tutorials as well. Tri-fold leg chair, detaches. Anyway, we'll cover that later as well. We'll go over and we'll probably build another one. So, as it stands right now, I am working out of my garage. It's not ideal. It's not heated. Once we get on to projects, I'll show you exactly how I like to work. All right. I'm very new to this, so I'm hoping that I can make this a success. I'm looking forward to learning with you guys and hopefully making things that you guys are interested in. Well, I'd like to thank you all for stopping by my new channel. I look forward to doing projects with you in the future. If you like the channel and you like what I did today, I'd like you to hit that subscribe and the notification bell so that you can be notified as soon as I have new content out for you guys. The next project will be a leather belt that I'm doing for a friend, actually. And we're going to try to cover all the tools that I use, and hopefully we'll learn stuff together. All right, I'll see you next time.